everyone, I'm Liz Hunt.
And I'm Chelsea Poppins.
And this is the Agency Rocket Show, where we talk about the chaos of running a creative agency.
Ooh, and today we have Keaton with us. Keaton is our digital strategist, right? Is that your title, Keaton?
Marketing coordinator.
Marketing coordinator. I just make up
all
titles.
All of the above.
All of it. Jack of all trades, master of all.
Yeah. Yes.
But our topic today is imposter syndrome. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like for each one of us. And I'm going to tell you guys, just so you guys are all on the same page with us, what imposter syndrome is. This is me taking the Google definition that pops up, the first one. So if it doesn't sound like your version, there's plenty of others.
Just make this up. Yeah.
No. So imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally despite being high performing in external and objective ways. This condition often results in people feeling like a fraud or a phony and doubting their abilities.
So we have the Google definition, but can we define what each of us
The
thought?
Urban Dictionary definition?
Sure. I mean, I suppose that was similar to what I thought it was, but it wasn't like exactly what I thought it was in my head.
What's your definition?
Well, I mean, I asked you first. So
I'm going to make Keaton, our guest, answer it first.
Oh, snap.
Cool. So I did a fair amount of research on this the past couple weeks since it got pushed back a couple times. So according to researcher Dr. Valerie Young, there are actually 5 imposter types. So it can be different for a lot of people. So there's the perfectionist, the expert, the natural genius, the soloist, and the super person. These all kind of manifest similarly, but they're all slightly different. For example, the perfectionist is exactly what it sounds like. You always feel like you could have done something better. Because you didn't do something perfectly, you feel like you're a fraud. The expert may feel like an imposter because they don't know absolutely everything about a topic, or they haven't mastered a skill or process as perfectly as they possibly could. So they feel like they're a fraud because they're not 100% the expert on something. The natural genius might feel like fraud because they don't believe that they're naturally intelligent or competent. So if you don't get something correct the first time, or it takes you longer to figure something out than other people, you feel like you're an imposter because you weren't naturally good at it right then and there. Soloists feel like they have to do everything themselves. If you have to ask for help, you start to question your own competence or your own abilities. And the super person believes that they have to be the hardest worker or reach the highest level possible of achievement. And if you don't, if you're not perfect and you're not at the top of the ladder, you're a fraud. So maybe you can relate to one of these 5 types.
What about all of them? What do you do when you relate to all of them?
You might have imposter syndrome.
An extra imposter? Are you just actually a fraud? That's what I would say. Maybe I am just actually a fraud.
Well, you know, one of the symptoms of imposter syndrome is that you can't realistically assess your own abilities. So that might be part of it.
Interesting.
That's a good point.
Oh, wow. So, Chelsea, what about your definition? So, Keaton had a really good answer.
I am just going to piggyback on that and say that was a really great answer.
Wait, what did you think before Keaton's answer?
I mean, that was very in-depth and it was very specialized for multiple individuals. But for me, I guess I would say imposter syndrome falls along that side of feeling not necessarily unworthy, but maybe not as qualified for a role as your peers. Even if you are, your resume says you're qualified. Maybe it's just, I associate imposter syndrome with a lot of people who are qualified in a situation and they don't see that the people that are applying for job applications or other things are not as qualified. They just have that false confidence. That's a direct tie for me. As like, you question your ability to do things, but there's so many people out there who don't have those talents and skills and they're just blazing with confidence at things. They're just talking out of their butt and they're getting into these positions that you are qualified for and they might not be.
Yeah.
That's something I always have to remind myself of too, is like the only difference between me and them is that they're actually doing it and I am not. Sometimes action is the most important thing versus just sitting back and being like, well, I'm a fraud, and sitting in that and sitting on your hands.
Yeah. What about you, Liz? I'm ready for your definition.
Come on, Liz.
Honestly, you guys have kind of said it, but I'll reiterate that it's essentially thinking that I shouldn't be in this group of people that know what they're doing, and I'm not qualified to be here. I'm not qualified to sit at this table or be among this specific type of person, or I'm not qualified to do this job or handle this type of role or manage the skill or whatever it is, because I think that it can pervade any sort of part of our lives. It can be part of being a mom, or it can be part of being a boss, or it can be part of being creative. It can be part of being a wife. You can have that imposter syndrome, I think, in all aspects of your life. And so to me, it's more about getting to the root of making sure that I know that I am a worthy person. And then because if I feel that way, if I feel like, no, I am loved, I am good enough and all these things, then that belief and assurance in myself, well, then I'll believe in myself as a mom. I'll believe in myself as a boss. I'll believe in myself as a creative and all these other areas in my life.
I love how you said it, that it's not just career, it's relational, it's in your family, because even the example that came to mind is when people go into relationships and they feel unworthy of someone's love or their affection. And so then they self-sabotage those relationships before they even can prove to themselves that they are worthy or even let that relationship flourish.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Self-sabotage is a really, really big one.
I'm sure there's ways that people do it in their career as well. They self-sabotage just by...
Well, yeah.
Absolutely. Just by not chasing certain positions or not applying or not making that call, not reaching out,
not showing up for the interview.
Right, exactly. Yeah, procrastination is huge.
Yeah, because just like what you were saying, Keaton, not chasing after something because you're scared. You do that if you are sitting in your fears, not chasing after a job promotion or not chasing after a new job or a new role that you actually are qualified for, but you're too scared to go after because you don't think that you're qualified because you're living in your imposter syndrome. Somebody else is going to go after it, whether they're qualified for it or not, but you're not going to because you're living in your fear of I'm not qualified.
Right, exactly. That fear that you won't be correct for your position. I mean, one of the authors that I was reading in the past couple of weeks, I think it was Claire Josa, he described the 4 Ps of imposter syndrome as perfectionism, paralysis, people-pleasing, and procrastination. So a lot of it really is just sitting on your hands because you don't feel like you're going to be perfect. You know, you don't feel like you're going to please the people around you. And you feel like you have to impress everybody rather than just being good enough for you.
Yeah. It's allowing the fear to be in control of your destiny and your life. It's allowing fear to be in control of your life. And I, for one, know that I can't live that way.
But have you in the past? When you first started this, did you suffer at all from imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Holy moly, yes. I had to wake up every single day when I first started the company and choose to get out of bed and show up because when I first started the company, I had gotten fired from my last gig and it was very public. It had been my quote dream job. And I was this art director for this cool up and coming agency that everybody wanted to be a part of and all this stuff. And this new management came in and they just let everybody go except for the intern and didn't really get along with the new management and they just fired everybody. And yeah, like I said, it was very public. And so I felt publicly humiliated. Right. And so I was coming up out of that to try to build my own company and try to build a career. And that is a very strange place to find yourself in, trying to face humiliation every day and still try to get out of bed.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine there was a pervasive sense of just having eyes on you a lot.
Yeah.
What's she going to do next?
Right.
Yeah. And people being like, what happened? Where did you go? Or what's going on? And me just having to figure out what the heck to tell people even. And I honestly kind of went into hiding, but I still had to choose to get out of bed every day and do a job. And I still had to choose to get up and get to work, even though I was terrified to do anything. because it was awful, but that's what you got to do. And it's one of those things where it's like, what can I do today? What is it that I can just accomplish and get through today? And then the next day gets a little easier, and then the next day gets a little easier, and then 4 years later you're like, okay, I'm feeling better, until it's now 12 years later and I'm a completely different person. So early on, you are always comparing yourself to other agencies. Like, oh my gosh, this agency, man, if I could be like them. If only. Their work is amazing. Their website is amazing. Look at how many people they have, or look at their work, or whatever it is. And I'm just like, if only I could be like them someday. You know?
Yeah. And it's funny too, because when I first found DayCloud's website, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, these guys are way too cool. They're not going to want me. They're not going to want to hire me. And I remember I looked at my parents when I was doing all the research to reach out to agencies in the Omaha area. And I was like, I want these guys, but there's no way they're going to go for me. And you were the only ones that did. So,
oh my gosh.
I love it.
See, and that is just mind blowing to me, because I know exactly what you are thinking. I know exactly where you've been, because I've been in that exact place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this agency, oh my gosh, right?
It's also crazy because Keaton never once from the beginning of getting to know you to now, have I ever sensed that you had imposter syndrome either, that it was just lurking underneath, because you've always stepped up to the challenge, and you've always talked very confidently about your work and how you're going to handle things. And I think the way you've approached every conversation with us has been with confidence and with backbone. And even with everything that you're doing now at DayCloud, you're constantly taking initiative on projects and offering to help things. And so even though you say that you still feel it some days where you're like, I don't know, I don't really know what to do, it doesn't show.
I could tell you just a couple of years ago, I probably would have, but I think I just kind of hit a point where I was like, stop sitting on your hands. Just go for it. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't just step up and start pushing. I mean, I have a little bit of that people pleaser in me. And I think that stems from just my want to help in general.
Yeah.
And so I would say that is usually where that stems from, is that people pleasing role. But I've had to kind of twist that. I've had to take that, because that can be really toxic. That can be really inauthentic, right? You can definitely take that people-pleasing, and it harms you, and it harms others' perceptions of you, and feels like you don't have a backbone. But you have to take that and twist it into something that's good for you and others. And that just means being of service.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Like you said, it is a very good quality and skill that you have. Not people-pleasing, but people-supporting. In a really great way, you are awesome at, like, let me help you. Let me do this for you. In a lot of ways, you're like, let me serve you. And that's what you're so good at. It's one of the 5 love languages, right? Is acts of service. And so in a lot of ways, it's how you show love, and it's how you show care. You care about something, so you do something about it, right? Mm-hmm. That's who you are. And that's one of your greatest strengths. And I think it's awesome and beautiful about you.
Aw, whatever.
No,
Thank you.
It is.
That's really kind of you. Thank you.
Yes. I'm not even trying to be kind. I'm just stating facts. So let me tell you a quick little thing here. I think it's been like 7 years. So over the last 7 years, every year, at the beginning of the year, I get a theme or a word for the year. And the very first year that I did it, it was like, I want to focus on this specific thing. And my theme was all around not allowing people's opinions of me to keep me from doing what I wanted to do. And the primary thing was I wanted to wear high heels. I love high heels. I know this is so silly, but I loved high heels, and I would never wear them because I always felt like it would make people think differently of me. It would make people think like, oh, she's just trying to get attention. Like, she's just trying to get attention. And so finally that year, I was like, you know what? I just like wearing high heels. And so instead of worrying about what other people think of me, I'm going to take this year and I'm going to wear high heels every day. And it is going to be all about me focusing on not worrying what other people think. And so I did. I spent the whole year wearing high heels almost every single day. And I'm not kidding you. That changed so much in my life because I literally forced myself to get up out of worrying about what other people are thinking because I couldn't. I had just determined. It was almost like this is my New Year's resolution or whatever. It's like, I'm going to stop worrying about what other people are thinking of me. And it was a very practical way that I did it. And in so many ways, it has changed my life forever.
Yeah,
and so
it's like exposure therapy almost.
Yeah.
You really just said, I'm just going to do it, and
yes,
that's the commitment.
Yes, yeah, a little bit of that immersion therapy, which is, that's who I am. That is how I face all my fears, is I just go at it and do it until I'm not afraid of it anymore. But that's what I would say, maybe for you, is like that people-pleasing thing. What is a practical way that you can address it?
Right.
What is something that you could do that is like, okay, here
baby
is
steps of how to get there.
Yes. Yes. A practical way that is simple, maybe even something you could do every day, but is small, that is low barrier to entry. That
I like how you
do.
say this, and now Keaton is going to be telling us no all the time.
Oh no, that movie Yes Man was about me.
Oh my gosh, I love that movie so much.
You're gonna regret this, because on Monday Keaton's gonna come in and you're gonna be like, Keaton, can you do this for me? And Keaton's gonna just say no. Well, I can't do that.
You can't say no to the people that actually pay you money to do your job. But anybody else, sure.
I'll walk into the office, I'll be wearing heels, and I'll be like, no. Actually, speaking of heels,
oh my gosh.
I've got those boots. They're like a 3-inch, maybe.
Oh,
I don't
my
know.
goodness.
They're like a biker boot. They count.
Yeah,
Nah.
they do not count. They
No,
do
I
have
don't
a
think-
click when you walk, though.
They do have a click. I do like the click. Speaking of heels, though, actually, this is pretty interesting. So 75% of executive women say that they've experienced imposter syndrome. So I think while men absolutely experience imposter feelings too, it's been shown to be much more common in women. And it actually seems to be even 10% based on my shallow research, right? I'm sure it varies, but I mean, that's a significant gap. And it makes sense, because women have to work a lot harder to be seen as worthy in both their personal and their professional lives. Even if you're a big boss lady CEO, as you were saying, Liz, you have to do a lot of work to grow in the face of that societal pressure and get into that automatic level of self-confidence that's needed for that role, for sure.
I listened to, I think it was someone on Shark Tank or some other type of entrepreneurial show, talk about how they'll sit around a table and they'll have these people come in and pitch them. All the guys will come in and be like, I am going to do this, this, and this with your business, and here's where we're going to take it. And then you have the women come in, and you know that they have done all of the research, all of the ways to prepare for this presentation. They have done the math, they have run the numbers, they've done all of the reports and analytics on it, because they know that they're going to go in there and they're going to get questioned and they're going to get drilled. And the thing is, women over prepare for these type of situations because they know they have to prove their worth. Like you said, 75% of women have imposter syndrome, and the men come in and they're like raging bulls ready to hype things up and probably don't do as much work to get to that point. And it's not saying all men are like that, but it's just kind of proves the point that women have to backtrack and they have to come with all the numbers and be 10 times more prepared than anybody else, and to get into certain positions.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot more questioning that goes on. And it's interesting because, like, even for me, being masculine, I guess, I've noticed that even I still get treated differently from even Sky, my girlfriend, because even if I'm at the mechanics and I might be coming across as female, because it changes every time, I swear, people are always confused. You can see it on their faces. They'll be switching pronouns in the middle of a conversation. But maybe if I'm even coming across as female at a mechanics or the hardware store, like, because I carry myself in that more masculine way, I've never really been talked down to or like condescendingly the same way that Skylar has in those situations. So I would say that something that I really respect about you two is that you still own your femininity. I feel like you're still, once again, the high heel conversation. You're presenting that really proudly, but you also own your executive space.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Liz is much more feminine than me.
You're feminine, Chels.
You dress up, Chelsea.
I will say, though, that is something that we, and I don't want to speak for you, Chels, but that's something I've had to learn. For me, it was never I just came out this way. I have had to learn how to take charge and own my confidence and own my power and own my self-assurance and look people in the eye and command presence. That's something I have had to learn over the years. And some of it comes with just maturity, just getting old. Some of it just comes with that and just experiencing mountains and valleys. Truly, I think some of it is you just seen some stuff.
Right.
I think some of it is that. And I think some of it is, well, that's probably a lot of it, actually, if I'm being honest, is just going through a lot. But I do think that also it's just getting the reps of doing this over and over, day in and day out, and just knowing your skills, knowing your craft, and knowing myself. Working on myself as a human. Recently, I've heard a lot that is like, don't necessarily work so much on your job as you work on yourself. Because if you work on yourself, your business will be better, your job will be better, and all that stuff. And I've heard that over the last few years, and I've really taken that to heart. And that's something that I've been working on is like, okay, I have to work on myself if I want to see all these things around me get better. And I've definitely seen that. And so, yeah.
I would say my story is different because I have a different background than you guys.
Right.
Growing up in basketball and being put on that platform early on in college, I think I developed a different standing with it. You go to college, you probably feel like an imposter because you're on air, you're getting viewed, your talent is always being measured against other athletes. I grew up on a farm, so I have that blue collar work ethic mentality that I will not be the best, but I will always outwork everybody else. And that took me way further than anything else. And it's why I was drafted into the WNBA and why I was able to play at that professional level. But I think even since retiring from basketball, because I was in a largely male dominated space of sports and what that looked like for women in sport, that when I started doing more of my career of actually being in businesses or agencies or whatever, I wasn't necessarily intimidated to be in a room full of men because I had been on that side of very male dominated spectrum of things. I already knew me and I already done a lot of work on me and worked on my relationship with me while I was overseas alone with no support system. And so I already had done that heart work. And I would say by the time I retired, the only imposter syndrome would be that everybody else had started their careers longer than me. And so when I retired, I felt like I needed to catch up to other people's lives because they've been working for the past 10 years and I'd been putting a ball in a hoop for the last such and such years. And they have families, they have kids, they have all these things. And so when I'm the same age as them and they're at a different place in all of these different aspects of themselves, that's the imposter syndrome that I was feeling. It wasn't necessarily those male dominated spaces in companies because I felt like I already belonged there. That was easy. I could carry myself very well in those conversations. I think I felt like an imposter syndrome in life.
Like the world had kind of moved on while you were on pause overseas. Interesting. It makes sense though. You'd come back and other people have started their careers. Maybe they have kids or they're married and it's like, what?
I just left and lived my life and I came back to Iowa, which is also very conservative. And if you go to any other California or Boston or Florida, people aren't getting married till their 30s or so.
You're
so that's
right
standard.
On track. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But you come back to Iowa and everyone's married their high school sweetheart and it's just a different atmosphere.
Yeah. That's a lot of Utah too. Same thing. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Chelsea, I just want to tell you that I think, and I know this is kind of as an aside.
Are you going to make it weird?
Yes, I am. I totally
Make it weird,
am.
Liz.
I am. I feel like God wants to tell you that he is going to redeem the time that you feel like you've lost. I just want you to know that.
I don't feel it anymore. I should have clarified.
I know.
I don't feel it anymore because I
still feel like He wants you to know that. He's going to redeem time for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I do feel like I caught up very fast. It's been
Yeah.
5 years since I retired, and even just partnering with you in DayCloud and being COO, and I'm getting engaged this year. I have a fiance.
Yeah.
I don't feel behind. I think in the beginning when you are shifting trajectory or changing chapters in your life and you don't really know where to run or what you're going to do or what your next chapter season of life looks like, I think the unknowns are also an added addition to that imposter syndrome and not feeling like you belong in that world.
Yeah.
But I'm good now.
As I
just talked to you guys about my mental break yesterday.
That's okay.
It's not perfect.
Nobody's perfect. The best of us.
Yeah. All the time. Well, I just want to draw the pattern of Chelsea and I both working on ourselves. And that's how we've gotten up out of that imposter stuff. We worked on ourselves. I just think that that's really interesting that we both kind of came to our own conclusion of we have to fix what's on the inside of us and get healthy on the inside. And now we are able to lead an organization as the executives, and we're able to own the space, like what you were saying, Keaton. And we are able to meet with other male executives and it doesn't bother us. And we don't, I think I can speak for you in saying this, Chelsea, but we don't have imposter syndrome anymore. I don't remember the last time I felt like I was not qualified to be in this role that I have now. And so I think that that's really interesting that we obviously came at it from our different stories and our different backgrounds, but ultimately that's what it was, is we both had to work on getting ourselves right.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that is the correlation of age and imposter syndrome and the maturity that goes with it is when you're young and you still are identifying yourself and figuring out who you are. It's very different than who we are now in our 30s. In our 30s, rounding Liz up a little bit, but no.
Wow! Chelsea!
I'm kidding.
Oh my goodness.
But I do think there's a correlation between age and understanding and identifying yourself with specific labels and all that hard work that we have done in our 20s and how that looks in our 30s. I do think that is a huge thing.
Yeah, that frontal lobe development at 25, 26.
I see Keaton bringing the science in.
I'm getting there. I'm getting that frontal lobe.
Cute.
It's developing right now.
Oh, look at you. I love it. I did hear once that your personality is fully fleshed out by the time you're 35. So
okay. I thought you were about to say that it was already developed, and I was like, that's really unfortunate for both of you.
No.
Yeah. I was like, so I'm stuck with this one? I thought I've already developed multiple personalities.
Liz can tell you all about that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
All right. But
14.
to go in line with the imposter syndrome questions, have you ever received praise or recognition for your work, but found it difficult to internalize or believe?
Yes. I literally have written down documents of testimonials and nice things that people have said to me. That way I don't forget it. It's like, okay, people actually said this to you. They weren't just being nice. This was like a client in a professional setting that said something kind about your work, something positive.
Yeah.
So it's really just a tool to combat some of that irrationality that goes on in here.
Yeah. I think it's human nature for everyone to need encouragement. I think everybody needs to have their soul feel good. Everybody needs that
validation.
Validation and appreciation. Always. I think everybody does. It's just good for the soul.
I can tell you, since my love language is words of affirmation, I receive love that way. It is one of those things that I do think everybody needs those words of affirmation, even if they have heard them before, because it's so easy to get down on ourselves than it is to hype ourselves up, and to hear it from an external source. I think the value and the impact of that is very different, because us as humans, our memory is telling us that we look beautiful every single day. The stimulus of that would go down and it has less value in holding on us. So if you go through our days and if Ryan tells me that I look beautiful one day, he probably, I'm not saying he does this on purpose, but sometimes he doesn't say as nice of things like that throughout the week. And it's been a week and I'll be thirsty for affirmations. And I was like, do I look good? You haven't told me in a while.
I mean, if that's what you need, if that's your love language, I get it. because mine's quality time. And if I don't get quality time with my husband, Andrew, then I'm basically like, I don't know if I love you. I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about you today. Don't tell him I said that. I mean, I'm being funny, but you know what I mean. I get it. It's what feeds your soul. And so, Keaton, I think everything you're saying is absolutely. Everyone needs that. Everyone needs to know that they are loved and appreciated and all that stuff. I do think that there are some people where it really fills their bucket, like Chelsea, where it's like extra. That is what really gets them.
But it's not just like surface level.
No.
It's
no.
When people say really nice things, such as
genuine.
My one friend is very good at giving to anybody. She will hype you up. She'll fill your cup. She'll do whatever.
Yeah.
And the way she says it, she will talk about you being a light, you having this type of energy, things that are very personal. And it feels like it's more about your personality and your character, not just superficial, like, you look beautiful, or the very mundane type of compliments. It's very to the heart type of compliments, and there is a difference between those,
for sure.
Yeah, when somebody really digs to the heart of your character and they put thought into what they're saying about you rather than just throwing words out.
Yeah, it means so much.
Does.
For me, a lot of the times it makes a huge difference who it's coming from and what it's actually about. If it's something that I am kind of insecure about, like if I go do a public speaking gig, I'm still learning how to do that kind of stuff right now. I'm trying to get better. And if somebody says that I did a good job doing that, I'm going to take that. I'm going to be much more appreciative of that because that's something that I am specifically a little more insecure about, trying to get better at, and I'm working on that right now. Whereas if somebody says, oh, you're really pretty, then I'm going to be like, thanks. Because I don't even think about that. I don't think about how I look or whatever and just move on. They're very different subject matters for me. So in a lot of ways, it really depends on the subject matter.
Yeah. And just like you, this public speaking, the insecurity around it. And it's so easy to get into your well of insecurity, whatever that topic might be. But public speaking is one of those where I'm actively trying not to self-deprecate, because I will oftentimes go into those situations telling them straight up that I'm working on this and I'm tackling my fears, where I just need to step in. And they probably understand that I haven't done a whole lot of it, but it is one of those things where I don't need to downplay. I don't need to downgrade myself so that I outshine their expectations, as if by telling them that I haven't done a lot of these is going to bring that expectation much lower. So I will be to the moon. I don't know. That's a toxic trait of mine.
I mean, that's a really good point that I think a lot of women do, is put yourself down. And that's one of those things that I actively correct my daughter. If she does, if she ever says anything negative about herself, I'm like, don't say that. You can't say that. That's not allowed in our house. Because, and Chelsea, we've talked about this before. What you say matters. The power of life and death is in the tongue. And that is such a true statement. You can bring life to yourself, or you can bring death to yourself with the words that you say. And so that's why I love that you are working on not doing that, because if you want to say good things about yourself, because if you say good things, then you are choosing to pour good things into yourself and choosing to say healthy things and choosing a healthy mindset and a healthy heart and all these things. And so I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that self-deprecation can be hard to dig yourself out of. And it's such a habit. It's so habitual.
Yes, it is.
You really have to make the effort to stop it at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's also crazy how we don't really think about outside of ourselves that everybody is just winging it. Nobody really has their shit together, and thinking that everybody else but ourselves don't have it together. It's outrageous, and it's kind of conceited to sit there and think that you are the only person that doesn't know what they're doing and is kind of pretending or maybe more embellishing on your skills and traits, because most men are going to be talking grandeur and embellishing on all of their skills and talents and selling themselves in a larger capacity than most women are going to be.
Right. That's a really good point. It is like a self-absorbed place to come from. You're not focusing on other people around you. You're not paying attention to other people around you. I read this post at some point. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but they were saying that artists, especially when they will show off their art to their friends, like, oh yeah, it's fine, I guess, or I only spent maybe 10 minutes on this. Instead, they've completely gone in the other direction. So they'll be like, this is my magnum opus. This is my masterpiece. This is the best thing I ever made. Mona Lisa, who? Just get so over the top with it. I haven't implemented that yet, but I don't know. Maybe I will.
I feel like any extreme end of the spectrum might not be great.
Yeah. I agree. I guess
there's a happy medium.
There is.
Yeah. Why can't we just be honest about the work?
Right.
Like, why can't we just say, man, yeah, I'm super proud of this. It took me 15, 25 hours and I worked really hard. I don't understand why we can't just be honest.
Right. Yeah. Because if you're honest, then you're vulnerable, Liz. You can't be vulnerable.
Oh, now that's interesting. I feel like, is that maybe what the problem is?
Vulnerability?
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people it is. Yeah, I think so. Being authentic and vulnerable in front of others can be very difficult. And I think that's something that I've learned a lot, kind of bringing it back to the gender thing, is like, just even being referred to as the correct pronouns kind of puts me in a situation, I feel like, where some people may view my existence as pretending to be something that I'm not. And it puts me in a vulnerable situation because that automatically, it puts me out there, I feel like, you know what I mean? Or when I dress, like when I wear ties and hyper masculine clothing, I feel like that puts me in a situation of being very vulnerable in front of people. But I'd be lying if I didn't do that. Being honest is being vulnerable. Being authentic is being vulnerable. And I would say that it's the antithesis of being an imposter because you're being your truest self, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. Being authentic is being vulnerable. I mean, that's true.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good...
that's maybe why, obviously that's why it's so hard. What were you going to say, Chels?
My mindset was just kind of trying to convey how authenticity is so vulnerable. The example that comes to mind is poetry or any type of artwork that is vulnerable. I used to do more poetry when I had more alone time and didn't have a significant other. I had a lot of alone time. And so I would do more poetry, but even sharing that with other people is such a thing. So I can relate to you, Keaton, and sharing pieces of yourself or sharing yourself in the raw to people and who you are. It is scary and it's terrifying. And
and even in our line of work, I mean, creativity is, even if it's on behalf of a client, you're still in all of your work. You're still in all of that, and you're putting that in front of them and just hoping that they jive with it, or that it's something that they can...
insanely vulnerable. Yes.
That's why designers going into an agency and getting client feedback is such a weird place, because it is your baby. It's not about you as a designer. It's about what the client wants, and their feedback isn't personal. It's not an attack on the artwork that you produced. It's just them trying to reshape it towards what their expectations is. I know that some of our designers have struggled with some client feedback in the past because they thought it should be a certain way.
Yeah, I think all designers struggle with that, whether they say they do or not, because there's always the tension between art and art that is functional. There's always going to be that. That's always going to be a thing. And I think clients, just in general, unless they are artists themselves, they're always going to see it more as a product, more as a function than they are ever going to see it as an art. And I think designers see it more as an art than they do a function. And that's just inevitably always going to be kind of this tension that we ride. And it's always going to be there, because that's just part of the role. Sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder, depending on the client, depending on the designer, depending on the project that we have. And
yeah, I think we're all also artists of our own selves and personality. And that's also why it's so hard to be ourselves around everybody, because not everybody is ready to receive the person that you are. And I think that's also why you develop different personalities for different groups of people. For me, I can't be the athlete, the jock around everybody. Yeah. Because I can't really be that person around my friends that are, I guess I've been around groups of people who are very, 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 very girly, and I can't relate to them as much. So I don't always show the athletic side.
Are you talking about me, Chelsea?
No. I got invited to hang with some people that I should not have been invited to hang with, and I did not feel like I belonged. But I mean, I think it's Keaton, just to come back to what you said. I am so happy that you feel comfortable being you around us. And I hope you don't feel that imposter or crazy vulnerability around us. And I hope you feel accepted by us.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the very first meeting that I had with Liz. She was like, wait, I'm sorry, what are your pronouns? And I was like, thank you. I didn't expect that, but it was just thoughtful. So
yeah,
I know it can be
really
hard sometimes.
Thoughtful. Chelsea.
You're so thoughtful, Liz.
I'm so thoughtful.
You're so thoughtful and beautiful and kind.
Oh my goodness. You're kind and smart and beautiful, and gosh darn it, people like you, Chelsea.
We're pretty awesome, guys. We're pretty great.
I would say so. It's one thing to, like, obviously you guys have a very good presentation on the DayCloud site that I was enamored with, but to actually meet and work with both of you and to see that you're just as cool, if not cooler, than how you present yourselves is a pleasant surprise.
Oh,
no, that's so
Jeez
kind.
Louise. I'm blushing. You can't tell because I have too much makeup on, but I'm definitely blushing.
We don't hire non-awesome people at DayCloud.
Well, we hired a few, but it wasn't you.
I'm still trying to get into the handbook.
Oh, yes! Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Remember, we have all of the rules in the handbook are there because of somebody. And so Keaton is trying to do something worthy of getting into the handbook.
Something hyper specific, something so out of left field that you guys are going to be like, we have to add this. What is this?
I'm like, what could you do that would...
Oh. Use too many GIFs in the Slack.
Yes.
For anyone that's listening and has no idea what we're talking about, there's things in our handbook like don't book a flight before you ask for permission to go on vacation, or don't drink alcohol while on the job, or don't fall asleep in Zoom meetings. But they're in the handbook for a reason. But we can't put see example A and then go to the storyline of why this is in the rule book.
Keaton wants to be in the handbook, though, so we have to come.
So bad. I have to immortalize myself here.
In my head, for some reason, you're showing up to the office in your pajamas, like flannel pajamas, and
Somebody's already done that, Liz.
Oh, really?
I won't name names. Yeah, someone's already done that.
Okay, but she wasn't wearing flannel pajamas. In my head, Keaton is wearing flannel pants.
They might have been princess pajamas, but they were definitely pajamas.
I know.
I'll show up in my Jim Hammer pants and my tank top, my pit vipers.
Yes.
It's going to be gym bro gear. It's just going to be no sleeves.
Yes, straight out of the powerlifting meet.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that'd be pretty funny.
Man. Well, I think that's a good place to end for the day. Great topic. Keaton, you're a wealth of knowledge. Thanks for doing all the research and coming up with all those stats to back imposter syndrome. And it's really cool to hear everybody's stories. So if you like this podcast, like, share, follow, we would love to hear any and all stories that you guys have of how you cope with imposter syndrome, any stories that made you feel like an imposter or fraud or whatever. Just email us at show@agency-rocket.com. That is the right email this time. Have a great day.
Bye, 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 bye.